agenda. We're going to talk about why customers are moving to AWS. We'll talk about the choices that you have when you're looking at the cloud native applications and the modern application stack. We'll go deep on Lambda and our container services, and then we're going to bring it all home with some customer examples and information about how you can go ahead and get started. So the first question that we like to ask our customers when they begin their modernization efforts is, how much of your infrastructure do you want or do you need to manage? Does managing that infrastructure actually improve your business? Do you have the expertise to do so? And will the effort that you spend managing the infrastructure actually be worth it? And for most customers that we've talked to, we find that they are spending about 80% of their time managing their infrastructure. And so that means only 20% of their time or their IT budgets actually get to be spent on innovating. The fastest way to flip that ratio is really to get rid of what we at AWS call that undifferentiated heavy lifting, managing the infrastructure, the servers, and all of the elements that go along with that. So many really estimate the work involved and they overestimate the value in running that infrastructure. So that's why we spend a lot of time helping our customers to remove that undifferentiated heavy lifting so they can spend more time innovating and providing more value to their customers. And the work that we're going to talk about here today with containers and serverless really are great examples of how customers are adopting that. So we talked about how managing your infrastructure is probably one of your biggest IT costs today, and how that expense is eating up the budget that your teams could be using to innovate. But what does it mean when we say manage less? So from the earliest days at AWS, the goal has really been to try and take away the burden of managing the infrastructure, the servers, the storage, the networking, security, operating system. All of that work is time consuming, it's expensive, and keeping up with that pace of technology innovation and keeping your teams trained on the tech stack is a job all in itself. As infrastructure has evolved, AWS has continued to find ways to help our customers to manage less and to innovate more. And again, things like Lambda and containers are great examples of that technology. So the drivers for customers that are moving to AWS, it's not just about the cost of the hardware, the software, the staff training. There really are many opportunities that bring customers to AWS, and absolutely the cost reduction, the scale, the reach that we can provide are huge drivers. But it's also about agility, productivity, the ability to automate everything, and the ability to quickly reach customers from anywhere on the planet. And at the end of the day, digital transformation is about automation and customer experiences, increased reach to your customers, staying ahead of your customers or your competitors. And AWS has helped thousands of the world's largest customers do just that. And many are doing this with the containers and serverless technology. I know that I'm excited about it, and I hope that you are too. So once you've made that smart choice that AWS is where you want to build and run these modern applications, the first choice you often need to make in that journey is compute. So let's go ahead and start there. So at AWS, when we think about compute, we often talk about it in three different buckets. The first bucket is instant-based computing, and this is the traditional EC2 way of thinking. It evolved from virtual machines and is sort of the way IT has traditionally been done. It gives our customers access to manage and customize these very deep environments at a very deep level. And AWS continues to innovate around instances both in the operating systems, the hardware, the CPUs, and all of the things that our customers continue to ask for to make it faster, more efficient, and more cost effective. The second bucket is containers. And containers are both a constructing or a packaging method for applications, but they're also how the applications are being run. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we dive more into container services. But containers really have become this critical way that customers are packaging and building and deploying their applications. They're smaller, They're more portable. They're easier to manage than full-blown machine-sized applications. And the third bucket is Lambda. And this is the serverless model that I'm looking forward to getting into with you guys in a bit. But it's more of a model where you essentially bring your code and then we handle all of the rest. We make the code run at scale, securely, reliably, and really, really important, this is not an or, this is an and. We have many customers that are building using these on-point instances. They're also using containers, and they're also using Lambda. And increasingly, as customers tell us that they want to manage less, as they add new applications and new functionality to their applications, they're doing it with containers. They're doing it with Lambda. Using Lambda to complement some of their existing investments. And today we're going to talk a little bit more of those options. We'll talk about how you can manage less. We'll talk about how our customers are blending those things together to solve their business problems and to innovate more. So when we compare these things, it's important to think about first how they are the same. And so we want to break down the similarities between them. And the reason there's so many similarities is because at the end of the day, our goal is to help remove that undifferentiated heavy lifting. And to do that, there's certain elements that you're going to continue seeing from us. We extract away the complexity, we fully manage it. There's a great ecosystem of partners that are built into these services, and they all support a wide range of use cases and workloads. There's also deep integration with the entirety of AWS, everything from our infrastructure, security management tools, and of course our partner ecosystem. So lots of similarities, but there's also plenty of differences. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other side. The biggest thing that we need to think about with Lambda is that it's event-oriented. And what we mean by that is that it sits idle, waiting right by your side, ready for an event to be triggered. And once an event is triggered, that system jumps into action. Once that's triggered, it's going to run your code, deploys the resources transparently to you. It's going to run your code at a millisecond speed and millisecond billing, and you're only going to have to pay for what you use. On the other hand, ECS and EKS, which are container services, they're more oriented around orchestrating the compute resources to run your containers or to manage those clusters that run those containers. And so it's a very different model. One is actually running the code in response to an event, that's Lambda. And one is managing and running the resources to run your containers and managing how those containers are orchestrated and then run across the application portfolio. So that's probably the biggest difference, and that trickles down to how they're priced, how they're measured, and how you interact with them as well. And we're going to get into them a little bit more individually. And again, I can't stress this enough. So many customers run both container services. They use Lambda, they use instances. This is not a binary decision that you're going to have to make. About 80% of our customers who have adopted container services have also adopted Lambda. This is actually a pretty powerful number. Lambda is such an important part of how our customers and even our internal teams are building and deploying their modern applications. It is core to think about this event-oriented architecture and the ability to react to these triggers, how they change over data source, customer actions, etc. Running that code and continuing on your processes, and Lambda is going to make that so easy for you. And so that's why we see such a high percentage of our customers using both of these types of services. So what are our customers building? Well, it's everything. It's everything that you could have done in a VM or might have done in instances, or maybe you've done it in a monolithic application in the past. They're doing containers, they're doing serverless, and they're doing both. Whether it's automation, data processing, edge computing, web applications, machine learning, mobile, across all industries, across all geographies. These are all very widely adopted. We have a tremendous number of case studies on our containers page, on our serverless page, and a lot of customer stories to go along with it. So definitely go check that out. There's a lot of adoption here across a wide variety of workloads. So we span the gamut of workloads for containers and serverless, but you probably still need to pick one, right? You need to figure out where to start. Well, again, we recommend customers start with coming back to that original question of how much do you want and how much do you need to manage? We're going to recommend that you start by considering the thing that requires you to manage the least and then try it. And in almost all cases, when a customer tells us that they want to get to market fast, we are going to recommend that you use Lambda because of the highest level of abstraction for running your code. What I've heard my coworkers say is that Lambda is the compression algorithm for everything that we've learned here at AWS across the years on how to run code and how to run applications at scale. And it's all baked into what you get with Lambda. So with Lambda, you only need to write the code for your business logic. You don't need to write all the configuration or to think about all the servers, the scaling, and how that's all going to come together. Lambda also has 200 built-in data and event sources. All these triggers are going to save your teams a tremendous amount of time when you're trying to tie together all these different applications and all to try to tie together all these different types of data sources. So when you're trying to build an application, if all you have to do is focus on writing your business logic and you could skip writing all that integration code, all the data code, all the triggers, all the event sources, and all the configuration of how these things are going to be deployed at scale. Lambda saves you so much time, and that's why customers continuously choose it. They get to market faster, and they also get to do it with a low TCO. Lambda does have a tremendous amount of clear benefits. Customers love it, but it's also not a one-size-fits-all. If your organization has standardized on a specific architecture or a specific container technology or something like Kubernetes, you may need to give up some of those benefits that Lambda provides in order to get the flexibility or to move further down the stack. It all comes down to that original question of how much do you want and how much do you need to manage. So start by considering Lambda and take this idea of a serverless first approach. And if you rule that out, that's fine, but at least you've considered it and we'll definitely have some more options for you. So we talked about Lambda being serverless, but what does serverless actually mean? And this has been a question that's been going on, I think, since I got into this industry. And it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I'm going to try to clear up some ambiguity around this. So when we say serverless, and to be very specific here, serverless to us means that there's no infrastructure to provision or manage. You're not thinking about servers. You're not thinking about operating systems or patching and those types of things. It automatically scales by units and consumption and in a value-based model. So you're not thinking about it in server hours or those traditional types of billing. You think about it in terms of requests or events or responses that those types of value-based billing. There's built-in availability and security and all these things that teams really do spend a disproportionate amount of time on trying to figure out and get right and to continuously optimize. It's all just baked into Lambda. And that's what we mean when we say that we remove that heavy lifting. That's how we reduce your overall TCO and when you start to adopt these types of platforms. And so if we get a little more specific, we talked about how Lambda is event-driven. And to understand that, you really need to understand what we mean when we say events. So in its simplest sort of technical terms, an event is a signal. It's some sort of notification to Lambda, in this case, that something's changed. And in most modern systems, that's a JSON message or a simple base text message that comes in and says, hey, something's changed, or here's some request. I need you to do something. Maybe what the state of the system is, what action needs to be taken. Often that's some sort of API call, but it's also from those 200 plus data sources and event sources that I mentioned that are built into Lambda. It's also the things that happen across a wide range of AWS and third-party services and data sources. So something changed. Here's what I want you to do. Please give me a response. That's essentially the simplest way to think about an event. And I like to think about it very much like a light switch, right? So in normal computing, you would turn your light on, light switch on, it's going to run all the time, and you're going to have to walk over and make a conscious choice to turn that light off. With Lambda, the light's always off. There's an automated sensor on the wall, and when you walk in, that's the event. It triggers a light to turn on. You're going to get charged by the millisecond until you leave the room. The sensor is going to notice that it's finished and it's going to turn off the light. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to worry about. And you're only charged for while it's running. That's the Lambda model. Very different, subtle, but fundamentally different. There's nothing to think about except I'm going to walk into the room and then I'm going to walk out of the room. And it doesn't matter if I want to bring in 10 people with me, if I want to bring 100 people, or if I want to have a huge party and have 1,000 people walking into this room with me. I don't have to make different decisions. It's all taken care of. And really, that's the big difference with Lambda. You don't think about how you're going to scale or think about how it's going to handle. It's just all built in. So Lego uses event-driven design, and everybody knows Legos. Sheen Bristles, somebody that I used to be an AWS serverless hero, has talked about this story before. But they, in 2017, had a very, very popular Black Friday, and their website was built on a traditional sort of monolithic application that didn't perform how they wanted, and they definitely had some issues. So they came to us. We worked with them to help them to understand what serverless means and how they can benefit from it. We talked about how they could choose this or how they could adopt this loosely coupled event-driven architecture built around Lambda and serverless technologies. And what they ended up building looks a lot like what you see on the screen here. They used EventBridge, which is one of our serverless sort of core services. And with that, they built in some functionality with Lambda with these events so that, for example, when a customer logs in, that triggers an event. When a customer puts something in their cart, or trying to check out, or to request shipping, or processes an order, these are all different Lambda functions and all different events that are going in and out of the system. They were able to have different teams work on these things separately, innovating in parallel, testing them, deploying them, shipping them. They put them into Lambda and they scale them. They were able to do this without the historical issues that they have. They were able to move faster at a lower TCO as a result of adopting this model. It's not just about building smarter platforms for Black Friday. Lambda is also how customers are innovating and getting to market faster. And a recent example of this is Coca-Cola. When COVID hit, they wanted to provide a touchless experience to their customers that were using these freestyle machines. And you've probably seen these things before. They're really cool. I know my kids and I like them. You can say, I want a Coke Zero with cherry, and then fully customize your experience there right on the screen. Well, in COVID, that's not going to happen. Customers are going to want to use their own smartphones. And to do this, Coke used Lambda. And they used this event-driven architecture to build a system from idea to rolling it out to over 30,000 of these freestyle machines around the world. So customers could walk up, scan a QR code right from their phone on the machine, make their selections. And once they make their selections, that's the event that then triggers Lambda, that then notifies the freestyle machine to make that configuration. They did this from POC to rolling it out in 100 days. For a company of that size, with their global scale, to deploy something at that speed and at that scale and cost of ownership is incredible. And that's the type of innovation that Lambda helps to make possible. It's worth noting that since last year, Lambda has had support to run containers. And again, containers are a way to package up your code, package up your application, and then you can put your functions inside of a container and give it to Lambda, and it's just going to run it as if you gave it code. So containers are this consistency that we've built into so many of our services. And you can absolutely run containers inside of Lambda, but that's separate from our ECS and EKS services, which are container services. And these are the services that help operations teams deploy and manage hundreds or thousands or even hundreds of thousands of containers. And so let's go ahead and dive into what we mean by container services. Earlier, I mentioned how containers really do represent the majority of all new applications that are being built and deployed today. And 2/3 of the industry's containers are running in AWS. Yes, 2/3. And when we asked our customers why they picked us for their container services, they tell us because we give them the most choices. We give them the most flexibility. We make it the easiest. And containers, again, are just a construct through the packaging method. You need a way to do something with them. And AWS is going to continue to innovate to make that as easy as possible for you to build your applications, deploy them, run them, scale them, secure them, and manage them. And these are all components. It's not just, I need an orchestration for my containers, because you do, but you're also going to need a bunch of other pieces that come together. So you're going to continue to see us build more support out for our containers into more and more of our services over time, just trying to make sure it's easier for our customers and for you. Many customers simply want to run containers, and others might have strong open source preferences that lead them more to Kubernetes. It's definitely not a one size fits all approach. You can pick the container service that aligns most directly with your answer to that original question of how much infrastructure do you want or do you need to manage? So let's say you go all in on containers and you want to manage as little as possible. You want to spend more time on your code, more time on your applications and innovation, and as little time on that container infrastructure. If that's the case, ECS is a great option. It's the most abstracted of our container solutions. It comes ready to run your containers at Amazon scale with an opinionated set of automations and configurations, but it still gives you plenty of flexibility and integrations to support whatever you want to throw at this thing whenever you want to run it. On the other hand, if you want more of that open source flexibility to bring that entirety of the open source community of tools, EKS or Kubernetes offering gives you a secure, reliable, and always up-to-date way to manage your Kubernetes clusters in AWS regions, or again, wherever those ones might be around the world. And finally, Fargate. And Fargate brings the benefits of that serverless operation model we talked about a couple minutes ago. And it brings that to ECS and EKS. So Fargate is a compute choice where you have this choice of running it on traditional instances or on a Fargate, and Fargate removes more of that undifferentiated heavy lifting, for customers that don't want to manage that underlying infrastructure and the instances, and they really want AWS to manage how that compute layer is provided. The reality is, just like between container services and Lambda, we have a long list of customers who use both ECS, EKS, and some examples of that might be one team just wants to focus on building and shipping applications that they might be building in the Docker ecosystem. They can plug that directly into ECS, they ship it, they run it, and everything's great. But another part of the organization might be building things on top of Kubernetes. They want to use EKS. They're containers, they're portable. It's not a one-way door, and that we're going to try to make it as easy as possible for our customers to use both. So we talked about the portability of the containers, and it's not just the ability to move between services, but also the ability to move between locations from your desktop where you might be developing to your test environment or to your production environment on-prem, to the edge, to an AWS region, anywhere you want to be. And many customers continue to have good reason to run these things outside of AWS. Maybe it's regulatory, might be data gravity, or maybe you're just too busy to think about moving it from one place to another right now. We're going to meet you where you're at physically, mentally, wherever you need to be, and ECS Anywhere and EKS Anywhere are good options. We give you the ability to run these workloads truly anywhere that you want to be. And finally, as we round out our thinking on container services, I want to talk to you about AWS App Runner, which is a new service that we launched a few months ago. It's now the easiest way to build and deploy your modern applications, things like web apps and APIs on AWS. It doesn't require you to have previous containers or infrastructure experience, but it still gives you the benefits and of the innovation around containers. So you think about App Runner as providing that full end-to-end modern application stack as managed services, as a managed service from AWS. You can start from a code repo, or plug it into GitHub, and App Runner is going to take care of everything. It's going to build the code, puts it into a container transparently for you, scales it, manages it. Or if you're already using containers and packaging your application containers, You can just give your container app to AppRunner, and it's going to take care of that deploy scale and manage it for you. So it's easy to use, but it's not a toy. It's really built for web scale. It uses Fargate behind the scenes, and it's built by the same teams as our big container services. And so what that means is that if you start with AppRunner, you don't need to worry that when your app gets really popular or when your business grows, that you're going to have to tear it down, re-architect, redeploy using all new services. AppRunner really is built for that global scale. It's built for whatever you want to run it. We just made it as easy as possible. Again, removing that undifferentiated heavy lifting and helping you to manage less and spend more time on innovating on your applications. So that's AppRunner. We're really excited about it, and I invite you to go check it out. I know I have plans to do so on this one as soon as I can get through a few more things. So a couple more things. AWS Proton is a new service that we just launched recently. And why is Proton important? Well, getting that workflow between the operators and the developers, it's always been hard. There's been service catalogs, there's been provisioning models, there's been templates, there's been all kinds of things over the years to help make this easier. And when you get to these smaller units of compute, like containers and serverless, it only gets a little more tricky for the operators because you have so many more of these things to manage. Instead of one virtual machine, you're going to have 50, you might have 50 containers or 100 Lambda functions. And so what Proton aims to do is really to, build a bridge, between the teams, letting the central operations team define those architectures, define those guardrails, that consistency around what tooling, what security, what computer configurations are approved and allowed. AppRunner really is aiming to build a bridge between the teams, letting the central operations teams define those architectures, to define those guardrails and that consistency around what tooling, what security, what configurations are approved and allowed, but then rolling that out to development teams so that they can plug that into their modern application development models, to plug it into their CI/CD pipelines, to plug it into their testing, plug it into all the different methodologies that they want to use to build their applications. So it gives them guardrails, but it also gives the operators the ability to keep track of all of this, to manage it, to update it when things need to be changed. So we're really, really excited about Proton. It's now generally available, and the customer feedback has been great. And if you check it out, please let me know what you think about it. When we look at the landscape across our modern application services, there's compute, there's infrastructure as a place to put your container images. There's all the networking and integration with things like Proton to help you manage it. And this is, again, what we mean by containers and serverless are really are the future of how customers are building these modern applications. And AWS really is making it as easy possible for our customers to plug all these things together and to take advantage of a complete solution. So I called this out a few times, but it's really important to make sure we stress this point, because this is not an or. This isn't containers versus serverless, or containers or serverless. This isn't ECS or EKS. This is an and. No customers have one single need. And we just try to make it as easy for you to use multiple services to get the job done. And T-Mobile is really a great example of this. They built a serverless development platform. They use Lambda for many of their customer-facing applications, but they also use Kubernetes. And they have some of these large applications, some of these large always-on applications that they run in Kubernetes environment. And their results speak for themselves. They're able to move really fast and innovate. They have great NPS scores, and they continue to grow their customer base with the strategy of blending these things together that enable them to use the right tools for the right job and to move fast. I hope you'll start this today. This may seem like a big leap from where you're at, but we've got a ton of resources and great partners to help you on this journey. If you're interested in AppRunner, you can check out AppRunnerWorkshop.com or ECSWorkshop.com. We also have EKSWorkshop.com. We have a lot of great Lambda training and getting started guides on our website, also at serverlessland.com. You can reach out to your AWS teams to schedule an immersion day to really do a deep dive on Lambda or containers. And when you're ready, you can pick a small project, pick a function, pick some configuration, and get started. And that way you can see for yourself, how you can really move quickly to see these results. And finally, when you want to go big, consider getting some help. We've seen that 84% of successful projects in this space involve a partner. And so one of our really strong recommendations is for you to look at the AWS partners and bring one on that can help you through understanding and architecting, implementing it, and being successful. Okay, so you joined Modern Application Summit to learn, and I hope you've done just that in the session, but there really is so much more. You can go deeper with 3-day course labs. You can get certified. We have there's many opportunities to get certified on our website. Check out aws.training if you want to find out more there. And thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about modern applications and containers and serverless.